former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. That is a pretty amazing figure. Now, if you add to that, so 2016 GOP turnout up 60%, Democratic turnout depressed down 20 to 30%. You've got to interpret that if you're a Republican, that there's a wide open field for them to win a general election. But Hillary often outperforms in these hypothetical matchups. Why?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think in the short run, the country's had, a long time, 24 years, to get used to Hillary Clinton. She has a base in the Democratic Party that's very stable. They're going to vote for her under almost any circumstance. And Trump is still both largely unknown and largely shaped by the news media. So if you're an independent or a weak Democrat, but you haven't been part of the Republican primary process, all of your understanding of Trump is mediated through the news media, who are not exactly his friends. The question is, if you look at exactly what you just said, here's a guy who is bringing lots of new people into the party. He's bringing people in who are switching, by the way, from Democrat to Republican to vote in the Republican primary. We have every evidence that there's a continued increase in interest in what he's doing. And I'm always amazed at all these folks who have been consistently wrong for a year. At every stage for a year, they've underestimated Trump. They now tell us about the general election. My advice is he will run a different general election than any of us can imagine, just as he has run a different primary than any of us could have imagined. And I sort of wait to see how Trump solves these problems before I'd assume that folks who don't have a clue are the right ones to tell us what's going to happen.
You actually made a lot of news last night when you were on the program, and you said, get over it as it relates to the establishment. A couple of stories out there that House, I actually found this pretty funny, and this was in the Washington Examiner. Some House conservatives are warning Trump to keep their promises. Well, isn't that one of the problems we've had, is that House Republicans did not keep their promises? They've shown no willingness to fight President Obama and stop his agenda, use the power of the purse, or repeal the parts of Obamacare they could, or stop executive amnesty. Didn't they kind of cause that themselves? Who were they to lecture?
Well, look, I think, again, there are factions in the House Republican Party who have different approaches to these things. Certainly the Freedom Caucus sees itself as a very hardline group. But I think what will be a surprise to everybody is that Trump wants to get things done and wants to move towards making Washington governable again. And I suspect he's going to actually be a pretty reliable partner with Paul Ryan in trying to think through, what can we do to get back to a balanced budget? What can we do to protect America's interests? How do we rebuild the American military? A point he said in passing today, how do we fix the Veterans Administration, which is a corrupt disaster? I think he's going to be very aggressive about moving on these kind of issues, and I think he'll find a large part of the House Republican Party very eager to work with him, and frankly, a good number of senators will find that they have things they can do with Trump that they may not have expected.
I want to talk strategically, tactically. Whoever the nominee is, in the case of Trump, he made the statement that he's ready to hit the Hillary scandal encyclopedia, Crooked Hillary. Is that the best strategy?
Well, I think it's an inevitable strategy because they're between the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton interest groups, the various businesses and governments that have tried to manipulate the State Department, her total failure to use her emails in a professional way, fitting national security. I mean, there's so much, think of Hillary as sort of this mound of scandals of various kinds. You can hardly ignore them. But I think there's a bigger issue. Hillary is the personification of the bureaucratic welfare state that has failed. My hope is that Trump is going to decide to take the same aggressiveness, the same boldness, the same energy that he's used in the Republican primary and go into places like Southside Chicago, go into Baltimore, go into places where you can draw a real contrast and ask people, do you really want to keep the same failures in charge, ruining your lives, ruining your neighborhoods, crippling your children's future, or are you ready to try something really different? I think if Trump has got the nerve to do that, it could be an extraordinary election this fall.
Let's talk a little bit about Terry McCullough. Speaking of corruption,